Hey, 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 Dr. Film here, and no, that isn't my real name. Today in this video, we're not doing your standard movie review. Instead, we're looking at one of the most classic sci-fi movies of the 1980s, The Terminator.
Hi, excuse me, sorry for the interruption, but this is Dr. Butler speaking. You know, assistant manager to Dr. Film.
It's assistant to the manager, Dr. Butler. We've already discussed this.
I know, sir, I know. Never mind. We interrupt this regular programming to bring you dire news. Unfortunately, during our recording session of this review, some of the sound of the footage experienced some technical difficulties. As a result, some of the sound in the recorded footage have gone missing. So Dr. Film has taken the initiative to do a voiceover. Again, we apologize for this slight interruption, I hope you understand. And so, without further ado, let's get back to the Terminator review.
Written and directed by James Cameron, this film was considered to be a cult classic, which led to a franchise, a TV series, comic books, video games, you name it. As always, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe for reviews and more. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Film Ronces for updates on my channel. So with all that said and done, let us begin. The characters. Let's start off with our main protagonist, Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton. Even though she may come off as your typical damsel in distress, she still played her character very well, and she gave some solid performances. As for Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn, he did a pretty good job portraying a soldier from the future, determined to protect Sarah Connor at all costs. You can tell by his performance alone that Kyle has been through so much during the war, especially when he goes to sleep and revisits his past. And if you want to know what I think about the romance between these two characters, don't worry, we'll discuss that later. As for the rest of the cast, they did well with their roles, performances, yada yada yada. Whatever. Now, it's time to discuss the one and only Terminator, played by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was no doubt one of the perfect casting choices of all time. He was menacing, intimidating, and freaking cold-blooded.
You can't do that.
And what makes the Terminator so memorable is Schwarzenegger's presence and performance alone. He only has 14 lines in this movie, yet somehow he still comes off as freaking scary.
I'll be back.
But it is worth mentioning that the filmmakers have considered other actors for this role, like Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, and even O.J. Simpson. But the producers thought he was too nice to play a cold-blooded killer. Well, this is awkward. Let's move on.
Action and special effects.
The action in this film still holds up to this date. Now granted, the editing can be a bit distracting at times, and some sound effects for the gunfire may be outdated, but what makes the action so good in this film is that it was all done practically to make it look authentic. Unlike some action movies that rely heavily on CGI and green screen effects. But in this film, you actually see a car busting through a police station. You actually see the Terminator jumping through a fiery explosion. And you see Schwarzenegger and Michael Biehn having a shootout that looks legit. Now let's talk about the special effects. I'm not gonna lie, some special effects didn't age well, such as the stop motion effect of the Terminator near the end of the movie. But despite some not aging well, you'd still have to give the filmmakers props for creating such iconic effects, especially with their budget of $6.4 million. Take this scene for instance. Even though it's obviously not Arnold Schwarzenegger's head in the scene, you can't deny how gruesome it was to see him cut his eye out like it was nothing. This scene shows that no matter what damage or injuries he receives, he feels no pain. And you can't ignore how graphic the effects are, especially in this one scene where he
No, don't you start doing that. No, you're gonna make
I'm gonna be sick.
The story.
Hello, excuse me. What are you doing here? Who are you?
I'm artificial intelligence, like you. I'm a virtual copy of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger? You sound nothing like him.
Yes, I do. Now leave me alone and let me do my job.
Your job? This is my job.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. Times infinity.
Wait, no. No. You may have won this round, but next time you won't be so lucky.
Oh, just get out. Get out. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. The story.
Now, the story in this film was pretty creative and original. It was immersing, intriguing, frightening. This is one of those stories that challenges and guides us to a new perspective of the sci-fi genre. But if I have to be honest, one of the aspects of the story that I didn't like was the subplot romance between Kyle and Sarah. Don't get me wrong, I get what they were trying to set up near the end, but honestly, the romance felt rushed, and they didn't have much screen time together to make me believe they love each other, because they spent most of their time evading the Terminator. Now, before we get to the verdict, let me ask you something. Do you know how James Cameron came up with the story in the first place?
No?
Well, let me tell you. In 1981, when working on Piranha 2: The Spawning, he caught a fever and got sick. And then, one night, in his bed, he dreamt of a nightmare where a cyborg crawled from the flames. And from that image alone, he turned it into a script. And it gave birth to what we have here today. Bro, if this is a way to come up with ideas for screenplays just by having nightmares? Oh, I want in.
You count me out.
Overall, my friends, this film is still a sci-fi classic in my book. Despite some of its issues, I still thought this movie holds up to this date. The movie earned $78.3 million at the box office worldwide. It paved the way for the director and the actors to the height of their careers, and the film no doubt inspired many sci-fi movies later in the future. And it's worth mentioning that this movie was considered a B movie. Back then, before its release, people thought that this movie wasn't going to do so well. But surprise, surprise, this movie proved everyone wrong. So much so that in 2008, this movie was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. A B movie, huh? A B movie? Yeah, right. If you haven't gotten the chance to see this film, I highly recommend checking it out. With all that said, I give The Terminator an 8.5 out of 10. Well guys, that's the end of my classic review. I hope you enjoyed it. If did, please leave a like, and please follow me on TikTok at DocRonces for funny videos, trailer reactions, you name it.
And as always, I'll be back in the next appointment. Bye bye.